After arriving at Anjou's place, which is revealed to be a beauty salon, she casually points out to Sito that he doesn't need to walk her home anymore since it's so close by. Despite her reassurance, Sito feels compelled to remind her not to spend time playing outside at night like she did earlier with the fireworks. His concern contrasts with her carefree demeanor as she begins to tease him, her playful attitude evident in the way she lingers outside. Their interaction is interrupted when Anjou's mother steps out of the salon. Her expression is stern, clearly displeased by the sight of her daughter messing around so late at night. Sito is immediately struck by how young Anjou's mother appears, so much so that it's hard to believe she's her parent. The resemblance is strong, and the youthful features only add to his growing sense of unease. Anjou's mother assesses Sito with a sharp gaze before deciding that if they have time to be out at this hour, they should make themselves useful. Without much room for objection, she tasks Sito with assisting in the salon the following day, instructing him to arrive at 10 a.m. Her commanding presence leaves him unable to refuse, and he reluctantly accepts, feeling cornered under her piercing look. The next morning, Sito finds himself at Anjou's family beauty salon, assisting with various tasks as promised. It feels surreal to him, as he never imagined that his first experience with a part-time job would be at Anjou's place. The buzzing activity in the salon keeps him busy, and he works diligently, cleaning and organizing the space while observing the flow of customers. What catches him off guard is Anjou's demeanor during work. Her playful and teasing nature is replaced by a focused and professional attitude as she assists her mother with small tasks and interacts with clients. Sito is momentarily stunned, seeing a side of her he hadn't anticipated. It's a stark contrast to her usual carefree behavior, and it leaves an impression on him. As the day winds down, the salon's work finally comes to an end. Anjou's mother gathers the two of them, handing out their pay for the day. She expresses her gratitude to Sito for helping out, remarking that July is always a particularly busy month for their business. Her words are warm, but tinged with curiosity as she comments on how unbelievable it is that someone as diligent and thorough as Sito could be friends with her daughter. She even praises his attention to detail and cleaning, an ability she admits she hadn't expected. Before letting him go, she offers him a piece of advice, half joking but sincere. She tells him to learn how to say no when dealing with Anjou, hinting at her daughter's demanding personality. Sito, already well acquainted with Anjou's antics, acknowledges her words silently. True to form, Anjou wastes no time as she turns to Sito and suggests they go out to play now that the work is over. Sito, having spent the morning working hard, firmly declines. Not one to give up easily, Anjou tries a different tactic, showering him with compliments for his effort and diligence. Sito, unimpressed, reminds her that she had a similar approach when she cut his hair. The mention of the haircut immediately changes the atmosphere. Anjou's mother, overhearing the remark, stiffens and turns to her daughter with a sharp look. The realization that Anjou had been cutting hair without her permission dawns on her, and her displeasure is clear. Anjou, ever the quick thinker, tries to dodge her mother's stern questioning about cutting Sito's hair. Without missing a beat, she grabs Sito by the arm and drags him toward the washing station, announcing that she's going to wash his hair as an excuse to escape the interrogation. Sito, caught off guard and clearly against the idea, protests weakly, but Anjou's demanding nature leaves him no choice. She even sweetens the deal, claiming it's only fair since she already cut his hair and now owes him a proper wash in return. Reluctantly, he gives in, realizing it's futile to argue with her. As Anjou sets about washing his hair, Sito can't help but feel awkward about the situation, especially since he's still processing the whirlwind of events from the morning. Anjou, on the other hand, seems completely unfazed, chatting casually as if this were the most normal thing in the world. Before long, Anjou's mother interrupts, stepping into the room to deliver some news. She informs Anjou that she's been called to the main branch of the salon and won't be back for the rest of the day. Her tone softens slightly as she advises Anjou not to stay out late or play outside too much, a subtle warning lingering in her words. However, her sharpness returns when she adds that they'll have a serious talk about the haircut incident once she's back. With that, she leaves, leaving Anjou and Sito alone in the salon. Sito, seizing the opportunity, suggests that he should head home now that the day's work is over. However, Anjou immediately counters his idea with her own, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. She tells him that since her mother doesn't want her outside too late, the best solution is for him to stay over at her place. That way, they can hang out and have as much fun as possible without worrying about curfews or her mother's warnings. Sito is stunned into silence. The suggestion catches him completely off guard, and his mind races to comprehend her bold idea. After some time, Sito begins to mull over the situation and decides it's better to head home that night. He reasons that staying over at Anjou's place isn't appropriate and would only make him feel uneasy. However, when he voices this, Anjou flatly refuses, brushing off his concerns with her characteristic insistence. She tells him to stay over, dismissing his attempts to explain, leaving him with no choice but to reluctantly sit back on the floor. Despite his compliance, his discomfort is written all over his face, and he looks distinctly out of place. Anjou, sitting on the edge of her bed, can't help but feel a pang of loneliness as she observes Sito's awkward behavior. His clear reluctance bothers her more than she expected, though she doesn't openly admit it. The room falls into a heavy silence between them, the atmosphere feeling more awkward by the minute. After a while, she breaks the stillness, asking him why he insists on sitting so far away in the corner of the room. Her tone is casual, but there's an underlying hint of vulnerability in her question. Sito, however, hesitates to move closer. He feels that keeping his distance is the safer option, given the circumstances. Anjou, noticing his reluctance, doesn't let it slide. She moves closer to him, her casual demeanor still intact, and tries to persuade him to sit beside her on the bed. Sito resists, expressing, albeit somewhat nervously, that he's perfectly fine where he is and doesn't need to move. Sito can't help but wonder what's going through Anjou's mind. From his perspective, her behavior feels overly casual, given that it's late at night and they're alone together. He reasons that such a situation should make her more self-conscious, considering he's a guy. Yet, she seems unfazed, as if the dynamic between them hasn't shifted at all. Eventually, Sito begins to rationalize her actions. Perhaps she's just used to this sort of thing, he thinks. After all, she's sociable and probably has other friends she's equally close with. Sito, after mustering some courage, hesitates before asking Anjou if this is how she typically asks people to stay over at her place. Her response is nonchalant. She admits that sometimes she does. This leaves Sito in a spiral of thoughts, wondering if that means she engages in dirty stuff like he had previously speculated. Though he quickly dismisses it as irrelevant, the thought lingers in the back of his mind, creating a mix of curiosity and nervousness. Unbeknownst to Sito, Anjou quietly moves behind him while still perched on the bed. Out of nowhere, she grabs his ears and playfully asks if he'd like to do something fun with her. Shocked by the unexpected gesture, Sito yelps in surprise, unable to form coherent words. Amused by his reaction, Anjou slides off the bed to sit beside him on the floor, her casual demeanor completely intact. She then tilts her head and asks what kind of fun he prefers, soft or hard. Sito, now completely flustered, catches the implication and nervously blurts out that he doesn't have any experience with such things. Realizing his interpretation, Anjou bursts into laughter before clarifying her intent. She suggests instead that they do something she's good at, leaving Sito unsure of what she means but also somewhat relieved. After persistent persuasion, Anjou manages to win him over, and they agree to her idea of fun. Pulling out a gaming console, Anjou sets everything up and the two begin playing games. As they dive into the experience, Sito struggles to keep up with her, fumbling with the controls and making obvious mistakes. Anjou quickly notices and teases him, asking if this is his first time playing games. Embarrassed, Sito admits that it is. Meanwhile, he can't help but feel a little silly for how tense he had been earlier. When Anjou first mentioned wanting to do something fun, his mind had leaped to all sorts of conclusions, only to discover she had meant video games all along. After their first game ends with Anjou winning, she confidently announces that Sito must now do whatever she says. Sito protests, arguing that such a rule should have been established before they started the game, so both parties could agree. However, Anjou pays no attention to his complaints, her focus now entirely on deciding what she should make him do. With a mischievous grin, she stretches her foot toward him, musing aloud whether she should demand a foot massage. Sito freezes, visibly horrified by the suggestion, and instinctively tries to back away. Anjou, clearly enjoying his discomfort, smirks and asks if he would actually touch her feet if she really meant it. Sito, flustered and defensive, explains that it's not a matter of wanting to. If she frames it as a command, he would feel obligated to comply. Sensing his distress, Anjou chuckles and changes her mind, suggesting instead that they play another match. Sito breathes a sigh of relief, grateful she was only teasing. But just as they prepare to start the second game, Anjou catches him off guard again. She casually asks if this is his first time entering a girl's room. Sito nods, admitting that it is. Seizing the opportunity, Anjou leans in with a playful glint in her eyes and questions whether he's happy that his first time in a girl's room happens to be hers. Sito begins to grow increasingly uneasy as Anjou continues to ask him questions that feel more personal and invasive. His mind races as he tries to keep up with the unexpected turns the conversation is taking. He is taken by surprise when, as they're playing the game, Anjou suddenly rests her body against him, causing him to almost lose his balance. He stumbles slightly, but Anjou quickly apologizes, explaining that her body tends to move on its own when she gets too heated. She then declares that she will let the game be her loss and offers Sito the chance to order her to do something in return. Sito is stunned by this sudden shift in Anjou's behavior. Her willingness to surrender so easily leaves him momentarily speechless, unsure of how to respond. He isn't accustomed to having this kind of power over her. After a moment of hesitation, Sito thinks of something to ask, but it isn't what he expected. He wishes somewhat awkwardly that she wouldn't invite others to stay over so easily. The request comes out abruptly, catching Anjou completely off guard. Her expression shows clear surprise, and Sito quickly adds that he didn't mean to make it sound too significant. Anjou, still a bit taken aback, tries to explain that she invites others because she has only ever had a few people stay over, just a couple of friends, and now Sito. She assures him that it's nothing out of the ordinary. Then, Anjou presses him with another question, this time asking if he dislikes the idea of other men staying in her room. Sito is reluctant to answer, but Anjou persists, growing more playful and insistent in her pursuit of an explanation. Her teasing takes a slightly more peculiar turn, making Sito feel increasingly uncomfortable. In an attempt to avoid further awkwardness, Sito quickly grabs his bag and hurries out of her room, escaping before the situation gets any more complicated. As he walks down the street, his mind is a whirlwind of regret. He can't believe he said anything so embarrassing, and the weight of it lingers with him for days. For the next few days, he cringes at the memory of what happened, feeling a mix of awkwardness and embarrassment every time he thinks about the encounter. Anjou and her friends are enjoying a sunny day at the pool, their laughter echoing as they splash around. Amidst the fun, one of them asks Anjou if she's fine with not inviting Sito along. Anjou, leaning back casually on a pool float, smirks and waves off the question, saying that it's actually for the best. She doesn't trust her friends, who are notoriously mischievous and would undoubtedly tease Sito endlessly if he were here. This sparks playful protests from her friends, with one retorting that Anjou should prioritize them over Sito. The lighthearted teasing escalates as they poke fun at each other, their banter filled with laughter. Amid the jokes, Anjou remarks that Sito probably wouldn't enjoy a place like this anyway. Besides, going to a pool with just the two of them would be awkward and practically impossible, or so she claims. As she speaks, an idea starts forming in her mind, her eyes lighting up mischievously. The next day at school, Anjou acts on her inspiration. She drags Sito up to the school rooftop during their break, much to his initial confusion. Once there, Sito is taken aback by what he sees, a small makeshift pool crafted from a rubber basin filled with running water. Anjou seems delighted with her impromptu setup, proudly showing it off as if it were a grand accomplishment. Sito, however, is less than impressed. He immediately points out that having a pool on the rooftop is a terrible idea, listing the potential dangers and risks. He also reminds her that he thought they had planned to study, not engage in something so absurd. Annoyed and embarrassed by the unexpected turn of events, he announces his intention to leave. Under Anjou's relentless urging, Sito eventually gives in and sits down in the small, makeshift pool alongside her. The space is cramped, with barely enough room for both of them to sit comfortably, and Sito immediately feels awkward about the situation. He mutters about how the pool is far too small, wondering if Anjou is really fine sharing such an intimate setting with someone like him. To his surprise, Anjou subtly remarks that she actually likes it. Her words catch him off guard, and before he can process them, she begins teasing him with her usual mischievous flair. She points out how pale and skinny he is for a guy, her tone both playful and a bit smug. Sito flushes with embarrassment, awkwardly fidgeting under her scrutiny as she pokes fun at his unassuming physique. Anjou, however, doesn't linger too long on her teasing and shifts the conversation. She mentions that they should go to a proper swimming pool next time, her casual tone carrying a hint of suggestion that leaves Sito more flustered than ever. The idea of going to a public pool with her, especially after this rooftop escapade, makes him feel self-conscious. Determined not to let her teasing define him, Sito resolves to make a change. Silently, he swears to himself that he'll train hard over the summer holiday. He's going to build a stronger, more athletic body so that next time he won't feel so out of place in situations like this. Sito, still panting and dripping with sweat from his 5 kilometers run, notices a group of people in the park performing various exercises. As he watches them, he decides that he needs to improve his physical fitness to avoid being teased by Anjou any longer. He's determined to train his body and even tan his skin a bit. He mentally prepares himself to push through the tough workout, but by the time he completes the run, he's completely out of breath, his legs aching from the strain. Stumbling into a nearby store, Sito immediately heads straight for the drink section, feeling as though he might collapse if he doesn't rehydrate soon. He grabs a bottle of water, chugging it down desperately. As he stands there, catching his breath, he pulls out the training list he made earlier, glancing at it. His eyes widen as he sees the intense regimen he's committed to: running, weight training, swimming, and even dietary changes. It feels overwhelming, and for a moment, he wonders if he's being too hard on himself, questioning if maybe he should reduce the intensity of his plan. But he quickly shakes off the thought, determined not to look weak in front of Anjou. He doesn't want to seem pathetic or like he's giving up on his efforts. Lost in his thoughts and still catching his breath, Sito barely notices Anjou approaching. Out of nowhere, she jumps onto his back, startling him. He nearly stumbles forward, but manages to keep his balance, wide-eyed and shocked by her sudden appearance. Anjou laughs, clearly amused by his reaction, and playfully asks what he's doing in the store. Sito, still trying to steady his breathing, can only blink in surprise as Anjou hangs off his back, her presence catching him completely off guard. Sito, still out of breath from his intense workout, tries to back away from Anjou, not wanting her to notice the sweat clinging to his clothes. His body is still drenched from the run, and he feels embarrassed by how much he's sweating. However, Anjou, showing no sign of discomfort, casually tells him that she doesn't mind his smell, brushing off any concerns he has. As they stand there, Anjou's attention shifts to the training program Sito had with him. Curious, she takes a look at it, prompting Sito to quickly come up with an excuse. He mentions that he had gotten sick during exams and doesn't want to go through that again, so he's decided to toughen up his body. He explains that it's not just about getting stronger, but making sure he stays healthy next time. Anjou nods, not questioning him further, and with a smirk, tells him that since she's free for the day, she's more than happy to help him out with his training. They move outside, where Sito continues his training with Anjou's guidance. She starts by assisting him with pull-ups, noticing that he's struggling to get the technique right. Sito grows increasingly nervous as they get closer, feeling awkward about the proximity between them. Anjou doesn't seem to notice his discomfort, focusing instead on helping him improve. Despite her casual and easygoing attitude, Sito is hyper-aware of her presence, the way she stands close to him, and the way she's trying to help him push through the physical challenge. After some time, they shift to running, and soon both of them are panting, utterly exhausted from the physical exertion. Anjou, with a slight laugh, collapses onto the grass to catch her breath, her body lying flat in the cool air. Sito, though tired, takes a moment to rest as well. But to his surprise, Anjou suddenly pulls him closer, asking him to use his shirt to wipe the sweat off her face. Sito freezes, unsure of how to react to the sudden closeness. His heart races as Anjou casually rests her head on his shirt, rubbing her sweat against it as though it's the most natural thing in the world. At that moment, Sito's nerves calmed a little. There's something oddly comforting about her nonchalant gesture, and despite the physical exhaustion he feels, he can't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him. It's as if the simple action of wiping her sweat has an oddly soothing effect on him, and for a moment, he's able to forget the nervousness and discomfort he had been feeling earlier. Sito, waiting for Anjou, overhears a conversation between two girls nearby. One of them is venting about her boyfriend's fashion sense, explaining to her friend how embarrassing it was when they went out on their last date. She mentions that her boyfriend had been wearing a checkered shirt, which she found to be tacky and out of place for him. After some reflection, she tells her friend that she's thinking of breaking up with him because of his poor fashion choices. Sito is taken aback by this. He can't believe that someone would break up with someone else over something as superficial as clothing. He had always thought clothes were just something you wore to cover up or keep warm, but now he starts to realize that there might be more to it. As he looks down at his own outfit, He wonders if his clothes might also be considered tacky or unflattering by others. He suddenly feels self-conscious, unsure if he's been paying enough attention to how he presents himself. Just as Sito is lost in thought, Anjou arrives and apologizes for making him wait. Her sudden appearance snaps Sito out of his internal monologue. They exchange a few quick words before heading out to the store together. Anjou explains that she needs to get something for her cat, which has been refusing to eat its food lately. Sito, having seen Anjou post pictures of her cat before, quickly guesses that the pet she's referring to is the one she often takes photos with. But as they walk towards the store, Sito can't help but wonder why he's been dragged along on this errand. He doesn't mind accompanying her, but it strikes him as odd that he's been involved in this particular shopping trip. As Sito walks through the store, he can't help but notice how stylish Anjou's clothes are. She wears outfits that reveal a lot of her skin, displaying both confidence and fashion sense. Sito feels a contrast between their styles, realizing that his clothes don't quite match hers. He tries to brush off the thought, reminding himself that this isn't a date, so it doesn't really matter if their clothes match. Still, he feels a bit self-conscious about his wardrobe, wondering if his outfit looks out of place. After a while of quiet shopping, Anjou notices that Sito has been unusually silent and seems bored. Wanting to liven things up, she picks up a soft feather from the display and brushes it lightly against Sito's skin. His body reacts immediately to the unexpected sensation, and he pulls back, flustered. He tries to brush it off, but Anjou only laughs, explaining that she was just trying to cheer him up. Later, Anjou offers Sito a playful proposition. She suggests that over the summer holiday, he can do whatever he wants with her. Sito thinks for a moment and then decides to ask her for help with something he's never cared much about before, his fashion. He's not sure why he suddenly feels the need to improve his appearance, but it seems like the right thing to do. Anjou is surprised by the request, but she agrees to help him out. She's curious about why he's suddenly interested in fashion, but Sito simply says that he feels he should have better clothes, without going into any further explanation. Despite her surprise, Anjou is willing to lend a hand and is eager to help him improve his wardrobe. Anjou truthfully tells Sito that his clothes are actually quite tacky. While she acknowledges the saying that one shouldn't judge by appearance, she points out that, in reality, people do judge based on looks. She recalls a time when she wore whatever she liked without worrying about others' opinions, but found that people did give her strange looks. Anjou helps Sito pick out a new outfit and change into it. As he reaches for his shoes, she notices he has a new pair of socks, which surprises her. She tells him that he should have shown them earlier. With a playful smile, she asks him to pay for the clothes she helped him pick out, and Sito expresses his gratitude for her help. However, when he checks his pocket, Sito realizes he only has 500 yen, and he immediately gets upset. He screams, wondering how he can afford the clothes with such little money. Anjou, calm and unbothered, tries to reassure him. She explains that while clothes are important, they're not everything, and that sometimes you can't just buy what you want. Sito reminds her that it was she who told him that appearance matters. Anjou simply tells him that no matter how he dresses, he'll still be the same Sito to her, and that she's not after his clothes. She reassures him that his true self is what matters most to her. While they sit together, Anjou pulls out a hair cream, and Sito, unsure of what it is, immediately gets nervous. He's about to run away, worried about what she might do with it. But Anjou calms him down, explaining that she just wants to style his hair. She assures him that there's no reason to be anxious and begins to apply the cream to his hair. Sito protests, telling her not to do it outside where there are so many people around, but Anjou tells him not to worry. Most people won't be paying attention to them. After she finishes, Anjou tells Sito to go to the restroom to fix his hair if he doesn't like it, as she knows the styling might look strange. Though Sito protests, he agrees and goes to the restroom to return his hair to normal. When he returns, he tells Anjou that the style wasn't as bad as she had warned, but he still doesn't understand why she insisted on styling his hair in the first place. As they are about to leave, Sito notices a group of guys talking to Anjou. They ask if they can speak with her for a few minutes. Anjou firmly declines, but the guys persist, trying to convince her that it won't take long. Sito, feeling uncomfortable and hurt, watches as they continue to pester Anjou. It stings him to see her being hit on like this, and he can't help but feel a little uneasy about the attention she's receiving from other guys. Anjou finally agrees to go with the guys to a nearby cleaner, where they continue to press their intentions, suggesting she join them for some fun, since they feel it's unsafe for a beautiful girl like her to be alone. One of them, thinking it's harmless, reaches toward her. But Anjou's expression immediately changes, and she makes it clear that she won't tolerate anyone touching her without permission. She doesn't oppose people flirting with her in general, but she strongly rejects their advances, especially when they're unwelcome. The guys, surprised by her reaction, question her anger, implying that her outfit might have given them the wrong impression. They argue that her clothes seem to suggest she was trying to attract attention or seduce someone. Anjou remains firm, not letting their assumptions bother her, but still upset by their boldness. At that moment, Sito steps in, approaching the group. He calmly addresses the guys, explaining that Anjou's appearance is not an invitation for anyone to assume they can make advances on her. Sito shares that he's been spending a lot of time around Anjou lately, and though there are still many things he doesn't know about her, he doesn't like seeing people talk about her as if they have the right to. As Sito speaks up, Anjou suddenly grabs his head in an intimate gesture, signaling to everyone that she's not just casually hanging out with him. He's someone important to her. The guys stand there shocked, witnessing the unexpected closeness between Sito and Anjou. On their way home, Anjou apologized to Sito for getting him involved in the situation with the guys, but Sito reassured her that it wasn't a big deal and that she didn't need to apologize. However, Anjou then admitted that the whole scenario had been a result of her trying to get Sito's attention in the first place, not those guys. She had deliberately chosen revealing clothing, hoping that Sito would be the one to notice, but instead, it was the guys who ended up getting distracted. Sito was taken aback, confused as to why she would target him. Anjou explained that she dressed the way she did because she wanted to see Sito's reaction. She had noticed him sneaking glances at her throughout the day and found it cute, but Sito quickly tried to explain that his glances weren't anything unusual, and he wasn't thinking anything weird. He knew she was just teasing him, and he tried to brush it off. However, Anjou persisted, telling him that he didn't even know what he liked himself. This comment caught Sito off guard, and he finally summoned the courage to speak up, admitting that he actually liked her fashion style. Anjou was surprised by his honesty, but she quickly teased him again, suggesting that he must be a fan of revealing clothes. Sito flustered and immediately tried to clarify, insisting that it wasn't what he meant at all. He quickly added that he thought her clothes were stylish, not just revealing. And since he said that, Anjou said that she would be assertive next time then, but when Sito heard that, he quickly told her that she likes revealing clothes, so she won't change her dressing mode. Whereas Anjou did not mean her clothes, but with Sito's reply, she saw that he was thinking about something else. As the summer break nears its end, Sito finds himself at school, attempting to finish his homework as Anjou has requested. He expects it to be a simple study session, but things quickly go awry in a way Sito doesn't anticipate. Sito, Anjou, and her friend Toyo are studying together, but Sito quickly regrets the arrangement. Anjou, who isn't really focused on studying, keeps distracting him. She mentions that she isn't feeling motivated, which leads her to sit in a relaxed position, opening her legs. This causes Sito to occasionally glance her way, though he tries to focus on his work. However, Anjou catches him looking and asks why he's staring at her thighs. Sito quickly denies it, trying to cover up his embarrassment. Meanwhile, Toyo is serious about the session. She is diligently working, showing Sito the problem she has solved, asking for his opinion on whether her answers are correct. She also talks about her future plans, mentioning a specific college she wants to get into. Sito listens to her with interest, but Anjou, noticing the interaction, grows a bit jealous. She starts to think that Sito is paying too much attention to Toyo, and her jealousy leads her to distract him further, making exaggerated gestures to draw his focus back to her. While Anjou continues her antics, Toyo, ever the observer, seems to find Sito and Anjou's interactions strangely compatible, as if they're in their own world of teasing and banter. Just then, their other friend, Kai, returns with a surprising twist. They had sent her to buy ice cream, but instead, she comes back empty-handed, explaining that she couldn't find any. Instead, she bought a water gun. Sito immediately freaks out at the sight of it, not knowing what to expect. Without hesitation, Anjou tests the gun by aiming it at Sito, spraying him with water. Sito, startled and too scared to react, nearly sinks into the ground from embarrassment. Anjou laughs at how easily he got scared, teasing him for being so weak, though she, too, wonders why Kai had chosen to buy a water gun in the first place. Despite her curiosity, Anjou doesn't stop teasing Sito. He, on the other hand, can't take it any longer and tells her to wait. He points out that she's been targeting him with a water gun for a while now. Anjou, without missing a beat, replies that she's doing it because he looked at Toyo in a weird way. Sito quickly protests, trying to explain that he wasn't looking at Toyo like that, but before he can finish, Kai joins in the chaos, aiming the water gun at Toyo as well. The study session completely devolves into a playful water fight, and they all stop trying to focus on their work. By the end of it, Sito's clothes are soaked through, leaving him feeling miserable and frustrated. He can't help but think how absurd this all is, especially seeing how playful and carefree Anjou and her friends are being. Outside, Sito stands by himself, trying to wring the water out of his clothes. As he does so, he notices Kamaki standing at the corner, watching the scene unfold. Kamaki had seen Anjou and the others earlier, but hadn't noticed that Sito was with them. She looks at him, a smirk playing on her face, as she assumes he's been enjoying his summer break, surrounded by girls. Sito, a bit flustered, quickly denies her assumption, insisting that it's not like that. Sito suddenly realizes that, with summer break nearly over, he hasn't thought much about the college he wants to get into. He's meant to be studying today, but instead, he ends up distracted playing around with Anjou and her friends. Though he knows it's been fun, the realization nags at him. As he reflects on it, he can't help but think that Kamaki sees him as foolish for treating this day like a game, focusing more on having fun than on his future plans. She makes him understand that he often gravitates toward whatever he finds enjoyable, whether that's studying or playing. She advises him to make the most of his days as a high school student, to embrace the freedom before things get more serious. While Sito's talking to Kamaki, Anjou, who's been inside, steps out and spots them. Without hesitation, she aims the water gun at him and sprays it all over his face, accusing him of looking at Kamaki in a weird way. Sito protests, but Anjou doesn't believe him. She insists that he likes the kind of girl Kamaki is, and Sito's inability to deny it only fuels her frustration. The more she sprays him, the angrier she gets, her jealousy taking over. Sito tries to explain, but Anjou's relentless, and soon she's drenched in water too from the repeated spraying. Sito sits alone, eating, his thoughts drifting to the upcoming festival. Just as he's lost in his contemplation, his phone rings. The caller is Anjou. She asks if he would like to go on a date with her. Caught off guard by the question, Sito hesitates at first but agrees. After the call ends, curiosity gets the best of him, and he Googles what a date really means. His eyes widen in surprise as he reads about the intimacy often associated with dates. He realizes that while he understands the platonic part, dating is generally something more intimate, and he doesn't have that kind of relationship with Anjou. As he prepares for the date, Sito dresses up, though he's still unsure of what to expect. When Anjou shows up, she's wearing a mask. Sito is taken aback, not recognizing her at first, but she quickly removes it and explains she bought it from a nearby shop. She's dressed more modestly than usual, and as they walk together, she links her arm with his. Sito is surprised by the sudden closeness, but Anjou doesn't seem to think much of it, assuming that since it's a date, it's natural. As they continue their walk, they approach a river where fish swim in the clear water. Anjou, seeing the fish, suddenly expresses a desire to catch some soulfish. However, she remembers she already has a cat at home and wonders if it would be too much to care for both. She asks Sito if he's interested in fishing for the soulfish, but he declines. Instead, his attention lingers on the fact that she's still holding onto his arm, something that bothers him more than he expected. Anjou insists that she will help Sito catch a fish, so she reluctantly removes her arm from his. Sito, still feeling a little uneasy about the closeness, notices that Anjou looks more mature today than usual, and in her modest dress, she somehow appears even more captivating than he expected. The sight catches him off guard, but before he can think much more about it, he suddenly feels lightheaded. His body betrays him, and he collapses, succumbing to the heat stroke. Anjou, noticing his condition, immediately lays his head on her lap for convenience. Sito, too weak to resist, lets her, though he's uncomfortable with the situation. He realizes it's not just the heat getting to him. Being in such an intimate position with her adds to his disorientation. After a while, Sito starts to recover and can speak again. He tells Anjou that he doesn't actually need the lap pillow, but she insists he needs to rest. Sito knows he's fine, but he doesn't want to admit that the reason he feels strange is because of the closeness of her thighs beneath his head. He wishes he could pull away, but his body doesn't cooperate. As he rests there, Anjou casually eats some candy. Sito, unable to look away, finds himself distracted by the way she eats. He never imagined it would be so captivating. When she offers him some candy, he accepts. As he takes a piece, he thanks her for sharing, but Anjou smiles to herself, pleased. She's aware that their fingers brushed as he took the candy, and she can't help but think that it's like an indirect kiss, even if it's not the same. Sito, still processing the moment, feels his face heat up. To his shock, Anjou leans in and pecks him on the cheek unexpectedly. The kiss is light, but the sensation lingers, leaving him flustered and confused. He doesn't know how to react, but before he can gather his thoughts, Anjou continues as if nothing happened. Anjou, feeling carefree, knows that the summer break is coming to an end. Still, she's not worried about it. She already looks forward to the time they'll spend together once school resumes. It doesn't seem to matter to her that the break is almost over. She'll still find ways to spend time with Sito. Sito's morning is already filled with responsibilities as class president, from helping teachers prepare for lessons to managing the growing pile of homework. Despite the busy start, he's feeling a sense of excitement about the new semester, hoping it will be a fresh start. However, his thoughts are frequently interrupted by Anjou. Earlier, one of her friends had approached him to ask if Anjou had contacted him, to which Sito responded negatively. The friend remarked that Anjou was often late to school, but hadn't checked her phone either. Sito found this strange, particularly since Anjou hadn't shown up on the first day of the semester. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. As he walks to school, his mind still occupied with thoughts of Anjou, Sito notices her ahead, looking around as if searching for something. She then enters a small shop, catching his attention. Curious, Sito approaches the shop and discovers that it's an oil massage parlor. He's confused, wondering what Anjou could be doing in a place like that. But just as he's trying to piece things together, he suddenly senses her presence behind him. Anjou appears out of nowhere, leaving him startled. She casually mentions that she needs his help, and when Sito suggests they should be heading to school, she brushes it off, claiming there's plenty of time before homeroom. She convinces him to assist her, despite his hesitation, and Sito reluctantly agrees, realizing he has little choice in the matter. Though he's perplexed by Anjou's actions, he follows her, unsure of what to expect. The situation only adds to the growing confusion he feels about her recent behavior, but he can't deny that he's drawn into whatever plans she has for the day. As Sito follows Anjou, she finally reveals the reason for her unusual behavior. Her cat, Masamune, had run away. She shows him a picture of the cat, a stray that they had taken in 2 years ago. Anjou explains that Masamune had gone missing the previous morning, which suddenly clicks in Sito's mind. He realizes that this is the reason Anjou had not come to school the day before, as she must have been searching for the cat. As they walk through the area searching for Masamune, time passes, and before long, it's nearly time for school. Sito tries to gently suggest that they head back to school, but Anjou remains determined. She insists that she can't go to school until she finds the cat. Sito, however, doesn't understand why she hadn't asked for help the day before, considering how much time has passed. It seems to him that Anjou could have enlisted others to help her search for Masamune earlier. Despite his confusion, Sito decides to help her. He tells her that he'll assist in finding the cat, which surprises Anjou. She expresses concern that he might feel bad about missing school, but Sito reassures her that it's not a problem. He knows he has a solid attendance record, and missing one day won't hurt. Anjou, though still hesitant, seems relieved by Sito's offer. As Anjou suddenly begins to cry, Sito is taken aback, unsure of what to say or do. He watches as her emotions overwhelm her, and the worry in her eyes is unmistakable. Anjou explains that she's not just upset about the cat's disappearance, but because she fears for Masamune's health. She mentions that cats tend to hide when they're not well, isolating themselves to avoid being disturbed. Anjou's voice shakes as she admits that she's terrified her cat might be dying, and the thought weighs heavily on her. She recalls how, the day before, she had gone back home after forgetting something and discovered that she had accidentally left the door open. Only later did she realize that Masamune had disappeared, and the guilt she feels is unbearable. Anjou believes that her mistake might have caused the cat's current state, and this burden of responsibility is too much for her to bear. Sito listens in silence, understanding that her emotional turmoil is more than just about the cat. It's a deep-rooted fear and guilt. In the midst of the emotional moment, Anjou's phone rings. It's her mother calling, and Sito can see the shift in Anjou's demeanor as she answers. Her mother is clearly angry, demanding to know why the school had contacted her about Anjou skipping class. But before Anjou can explain herself, her mother delivers some unexpected news. She has found Masamune. As Anjou and Sito rush to her home, the weight of the situation hangs in the air. Anjou's mind races with worry, and Sito can't help but feel a heavy sense of empathy for her. When they finally arrive, they find Anjou's mom standing in the small shop with Masamune resting quietly in a bed. The cat, usually vibrant and full of life, now looks frail and weak, an image that stirs something deep in Anjou's chest. Anjou's mom speaks softly but firmly, explaining what had happened after Anjou left. She reveals that after Anjou's departure, she had found Masamune lying in front of the shop, unconscious. In a panic, she rushed the cat to the vet, but the prognosis wasn't good. The vet explained that Masamune, being an older cat, had likely reached the end of her life, and there wasn't much they could do. Her mother, deeply affected by the news, had decided to bring Masamune back to the shop so she could spend her final moments in the place she had once called home. It was clear to Anjou's mom that the cat deserved peace in familiar surroundings. Anjou, feeling an overwhelming sense of guilt, steps forward to Masamune's side. Her heart aches as she gently strokes the cat's fur, her fingers trembling with both sorrow and regret. She can't help but blame herself for what happened. The thought that Masamune's escape, something as simple as an open door, might have caused this pain overwhelms her. If only she had been more careful, more vigilant. Sito, standing quietly behind her, watches the scene unfold with a quiet understanding. He knows there's little he can say to alleviate Anjou's guilt, but he stays by her side, a silent presence offering support. Anjou, despite the sadness in her heart, decides that she will stay with Masamune. She knows that the cat is in her final moments, and she can't bring herself to leave her alone. This decision, though painful, is the only thing that feels right. As Anjou's mom gently suggests to Sito that he should go to school, she apologizes for Anjou's insistence on having him accompany her. Sito, however, is already in the middle of the moment, unsure whether he should leave Anjou in her time of need. Just as he begins to turn toward the door, he feels a sudden tug on his clothes. Anjou, still overwhelmed by the emotional weight of the situation, pulls him closer, silently asking him to stay. Her gesture speaks volumes, and Sito, recognizing the depth of her pain and need for support, silently agrees to stay by her side. The atmosphere in the small shop becomes heavy as Masamune breathes her last. Anjou, holding the cat close, bursts into tears, the floodgates of her emotions opening all at once. Sito, feeling a rush of helplessness, panics. He is not sure what to do or how to comfort her in this moment of profound loss. His usual sense of composure falters, and all he can do is stand there, staring at Anjou and her grieving figure, feeling an overwhelming sense of regret for not being able to alleviate her pain. After a while, one of Anjou's friends arrives, gently guiding Anjou to the Handcroft Club room to offer her some distraction from the heavy grief. Sito, still quietly concerned about Anjou, follows along, not wanting to leave her alone. To his surprise, he finds that some of Anjou's other friends are already there, and they quickly start talking and trying to lighten the mood. Sito, despite his own discomfort, decides to bring in a hot pot as a gesture of support for Anjou, wanting to offer something that might comfort her and her friends in this somber moment. The hot pot, however, doesn't exactly turn out as planned. As everyone digs in, they soon realize that the broth is far saltier than expected. Sito, puzzled at first, then recalls that he had mistakenly added an excessive amount of chicken broth to the pot, thinking it would enrich the flavor. In class, a conversation begins to unfold between Sito's classmates. One of them, Inuyama, starts talking about a magazine he's reading, which catches the attention of a few others. However, Toyota, a cool and aloof classmate known for her composed demeanor, remarks that they should keep conversations like that more discreet. She doesn't want any unnecessary attention, and her cold tone reinforces her desire for privacy. As the conversation continues, Inuyama notices something fall from Toyota's desk, a small toy. He picks it up and tries to hand it back to her, but she responds with indifference, saying she has no use for anything cutesy like that, and coolly walks back to her seat. Despite her outward appearance, Inuyama seems to be fascinated by Toyota, admiring her from a distance. He can't help but talk about how he's interested in her, though he's unsure if he has a chance with someone as unattainable as she is. Meanwhile, Anjou, ever the playful and unpredictable presence in Sito's life, suddenly jumps on him from behind, asking if he's talking about Toyota. Sito, startled by the sudden interruption, quickly denies it, trying to clear up any misunderstanding. Anjou's teasing tone makes Sito feel a bit awkward, especially with the growing attention from those around them. Toyota, from a distance, observes the situation, noting how close Anjou and Sito seem to be. She doesn't comment on it directly, but seems to file it away in her mind as she watches them interact. Later, Toyota is seen once again with the small toy that had fallen earlier. She appears much more relaxed now, holding the toy in her hands and seeming quite content. The toy, it turns out, holds a special place in Toyota's heart. It has a name, Soda, and she has an almost obsessive attachment to it. Toyota finds herself in front of a comic store, her gaze drawn to a sign announcing the upcoming release of the second season of a popular series. As she looks around, she becomes aware of the possibility of being seen by others, which makes her feel a bit embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, she decides to go inside, determined to check it out. Toyota quietly roams the aisles, scanning through the items on display. However, to her surprise, Inuyama appears, catching her off guard. He had been following her without her noticing. Inuyama, a bit flustered but trying to act casual, mentions that he was also interested in checking out the toys. He mutters something about wanting a specific wooden chair. Toyota, sensing his excitement, hands him the one she had just picked up, and they trade items. Inuyama, now grinning from ear to ear, is thrilled with the wooden chair. As Toyota watches the exchange, she notices that they share similar tastes, particularly when it comes to quirky and unusual items. When Toyota inspects the toy Inuyama gave her in return, her face lights up with genuine excitement. It's the exact toy she had been hoping for. Overcome with joy, she thanks Inuyama sincerely. Then, with a slight blush, she admits to him that she actually does like cute things like this toy, even though she'd been trying to keep that part of herself hidden. She asks him to keep it a secret, not wanting to let anyone else know about her fondness for such things. The next day, Inuyama shows up to school wearing a ribbon tied around his head, trying to appear cute. His intentions are clear, but when Toyota sees him, she shoots him a cold glare and walks past without acknowledging him. Inuyama is visibly shocked by her icy reaction, but at the same time, he feels a strange sense of excitement from her cold stare. It's confusing to him, yet he can't help but feel a rush of adrenaline. Sito, who witnesses the interaction from a distance, can't help but think that Inuyama is acting a bit strange. Sito and Anjou sit side by side in an empty classroom, tasked with writing their written apology letters for their unauthorized absences from school the previous week. The homeroom teacher also reminds them to submit their career path forms, adding a layer of responsibility to their task. As they settle into their seats, Anjou ends up using the same desk as Sito, much to his surprise. Despite the serious nature of their assignment, Anjou apologizes for the recent events, her tone softer than usual. Sito, however, reassures her, telling her not to worry about it. He also admits that he had submitted his career path form as undecided, unsure about what direction to take, and that the apology letter was a necessary formality in any case. Anjou, ever playful and full of energy, proposes a more unusual idea, a teacher roleplay. She suggests that Sito would make a great teacher, clearly amused by the thought of it. Sito, however, reminds her that they still need to focus on the task at hand, writing the apology letter. Despite his initial reluctance, he can't help but entertain her suggestion, partly because of the way Anjou persistently pushes the idea. With a mischievous smile, Anjou reveals her own apology letter, which she has written in a way that's almost too simple, just a broad apology for everything. She doesn't seem overly concerned with the specifics. Sito, though, knows he needs to put more effort into his own letter. Still, Anjou insists that they focus on their roleplay, arguing that it would be a more fun way to spend their time. Reluctantly, Sito agrees to indulge her idea. Sito, nervously trying to act as a teacher during their roleplay, struggles to keep his composure. His unease is palpable, and Anjou, sensing his discomfort, decides to have a little fun with him. She leans in with a teasing smile and asks if he has someone he likes. Sito, caught off guard, answers with a somewhat evasive response, claiming he doesn't know what he wants to do and doesn't have time to think about things like that. Anjou, unimpressed by his lackluster reply, comments that it's a boring answer. She teases him further, suggesting that if he keeps thinking like that, he'll never get all lovey-dovey with a high school girl. In an effort to push his buttons a bit more, Anjou moves closer to him and offers him a sweet she's eating. Sito, still flustered by the entire situation, doesn't quite know how to react. At that moment, the door opens, and the homeroom teacher enters, causing Sito to jump slightly in surprise. The teacher looks at them both and asks if they've finished writing their apology letters. Sito, feeling the pressure, quickly responds that he'll get to it right away, wanting to avoid any further embarrassment. However, Anjou, in her usual playful manner, announces that she helped him write something. But as Sito reads what she's written, it's clear that it's just another of her teasing jokes, adding to his frustration. Anjou is seen applying something to herself, and Sito, watching her in curiosity, wonders what she's doing. She notices his gaze and, with a teasing smile, asks if he's interested in her. Sito, a bit flustered by her sudden question, responds that he's simply wondering what she's doing. She casually explains that she's using a solid perfume, a different kind from the usual ones that contain alcohol, which can dry out the skin. With a playful glint in her eye, Anjou then rubs some of the solid perfume on Sito's neck. She explains that this version is gentler on the skin compared to the alcohol-based ones. Sito, feeling the warmth of her touch, is struck by the familiar scent that lingers in the air. It's the same fragrance Anjou always wears, a scent he's grown accustomed to. He finds himself noticing how closely it's tied to her presence, making the moment feel oddly intimate. On their way back from school, Anjou enthusiastically mimics their homeroom teacher, perfectly capturing his characteristic frown and stern demeanor. She declares, in her best imitation of his voice, that their punishment for skipping class is to serve as the cultural festival committee representatives for their class. Turning to Sito, she asks with a mischievous grin if she sounds just like their teacher. Sito chuckles at her impression, but Anjou's playful energy soon wanes as she groans about how being a cultural festival representative sounds like a tiresome job. However, Sito reassures her with a smile, explaining that he doesn't mind. After all, he's been the class representative from the start, so he's used to responsibilities like this. Besides, he adds earnestly he's glad she's doing it with him. Her presence reassures him, as he admits he's not particularly skilled at managing the class on his own. Later, Anjou starts complaining about how sweaty she feels in the sweltering summer heat. Sito, noticing her discomfort, innocently asks why she doesn't switch to summer clothes. With a playful pout, Anjou waves off a suggestion, replying with conviction that looking cute is far more important, no matter if it's hot or cold. The two soon find themselves in a convenience store, where Anjou eagerly grabs a frappe to cool down. While savoring her drink, she's shocked to learn that Sito has never had one before. Curious, she asks why, and he explains somewhat awkwardly that he doesn't know what it's made of. Anjou, clearly unimpressed by his cautious nature, takes a bold sip and then grins mischievously as she offers the drink to him. When he hesitates, she insists, and in true Anjou fashion, she doesn't just encourage him, but pushes the straw right into his mouth. Sito is startled but complies, only to be pleasantly surprised by the frappe's refreshing sweetness. Before he can say much, Anjou seizes the opportunity to tease him, giggling as she points out that they just shared an indirect kiss. Flustered, Sito shoots back that she must have done it on purpose, but Anjou simply laughs, leaving him wondering if she really did. The next day at school, Anjou playfully tries to get Sito to take a bite of her snack, leaning toward him with an expectant grin. Sito, visibly flustered, tries to refuse, mumbling excuses about not wanting to impose. However, Anjou remains persistent, edging closer and cheerfully urging him to just try it. Meanwhile, Inuyama watches the scene unfold from a distance, a sly smile forming on his face as he starts scribbling something in his notebook, clearly inspired by their interaction. Not far from him, Toyota is also observing the pair. She blushes faintly, her lips curling into a soft smile, but says nothing, content to watch quietly. Later that day, Toyota is seen sitting in a cozy panda coffee shop. She excitedly orders a cream soda, and when the attendant serves it to her, her eyes light up with delight. Admiring the colorful, bubbly drink, she exclaims that it's so cute she almost feels guilty about drinking it. Just as she's savoring the moment, her gaze falls on someone nearby, Inuyama. She notices him seated at a table not far from hers, also with a cream soda in front of him. Toyota is taken aback, surprised to see him there, but quickly gathers her composure and greets him warmly. Inuyama looks up, equally surprised to see her. Toyota invites Inuyama to sit with her. He hesitates, but eventually moves to her table. He feels like he might have disturbed her quiet moment. To ease the situation, he asks her about the cream soda. Toyota nods, showing she enjoys it a lot. Inuyama talks about how the cream soda at Panda Coffee feels special. Toyota's face flushes with a mix of anger and embarrassment. She quickly jumps to the conclusion that he's been mocking her and might have been secretly doing so for a while. Feeling exposed, she accuses him of making fun of her behind her back, her voice sharp with hurt. Inuyama, caught off guard, hurriedly explains himself. He insists that it wasn't his intention to ridicule her. Instead, he says he was genuinely curious about her after she shared how much she loves cute things. Her enthusiasm had stuck with him, and he found himself wanting to capture it through his art. He even admits that this curiosity was part of the reason he decided to change his hairstyle, hoping it might make him look a little more approachable in her eyes. Toyota, still holding the sketchbook, narrows her eyes at Inuyama. With a playful yet assertive tone, she tells him that, as compensation for drawing her without permission, he needs to treat her to the cafe's famous moro noir dessert. Inuyama, startled by the demand, quickly tries to protest. He explains that the moro noir is enormous, insisting she won't be able to finish it on her own. Toyota, unfazed, waves off his concerns and suggests they simply share it. She confidently points out that splitting the dessert would make it manageable for both of them. Inuyama freezes, caught off guard by her suggestion. The idea of sharing a dessert with a girl, especially Toyota, leaves him momentarily stunned. His thoughts spiral as he struggles to process the situation, imagining the scene and how close they'd have to sit to share it. As Inuyama is lost in thought, Toyota glances at him, noticing his hesitation. Without skipping a beat, she casually adds that he should also stop using his current hairstyle, bluntly calling it way too gross. Her comment snaps him back to reality, leaving him flustered and scrambling to respond. Toyota, however, doesn't seem to care about his reaction, looking rather pleased with herself for getting her way.